dawn, and we ponder our lives to this new day and the lives of others who have gone before. Their bodies are buried, their flesh is gone, as ours will be after our last day. There will be dawn no more for you and me. And yet, what are we? Are we simply pulsating molecules of flesh, blood, and brain, skittering nerve impulses and myriad channels, enclosed in a mind-body that is here now, but can never transcend to elsewhere or elsewhen? Can you and I never be more than we are, or seem to be, at this instant? The human imagination cries out against a physically limited universe with a built-in end point for each of us. We are here to explore evidence that there are dimensions beyond here-ness and now-ness, that we may be entering a new age that will bring us into undreamed-of connections with each other and perhaps with existences beyond this life. We meet in a graveyard where life ends, or does it? I've said exploration and evidence because you and I, we're here for a learning process. Learning is not simply accepting. It requires an inquiring and skeptical attitude. I wish to represent the reality principle as so many of us have understood it. I'm personally receptive to this learning process only because of this woman, Jayne Smith. She is our teacher. Jayne, will you be our teacher?
I would be very happy to be your teacher, Burke. But I have to tell you that I think the dynamics of this teaching situation are a little different than the ordinary teacher-student process. And I'll tell you why. I honestly believe that when I relate my near-death experience and you resonate to the things that I'm saying, that it will be because I am helping you to remember things that you already know. I believe that all the things that I was told are in our hearts. I think you already have this knowledge buried in your own heart's wisdom or in your soul memory or whatever term you want to use for that. So because of that, I will not be teaching you something new, but I will be helping you to remember what you already know, helping you to open up your heart. You see, I think of myself as a messenger, maybe, more than a teacher. When I had my near-death experience, I was given messages, revelations, really, and I think they were given to me so that I could bring them back and share them with as many people as I possibly can. So it's become my great joy to do exactly that.
We're in a graveyard, a last resting place. It's called Your Thoughts.
A last resting place. That has a sound of great finality, doesn't it, Burke? But you see, it isn't like that at all. Now, if you want to think of the graveyard as the last resting place for the physical body, I think that's an accurate thing to say. But it's for the physical body only that it's a last resting place. Because the essence of you, Burke Hulley, your beingness, your soul, your spirit, everything that goes into making you, you, except for your physical body, goes on. It goes on and on to greater adventure, world without end. And Burke, if it were only my experience that caused me to say this kind of thing, I would say perhaps one person's experience isn't enough for the whole world to tune in and believe. But it's not just my own experience. In the early 1980s, there was a Gallup poll conducted about this very topic, and it was found that in the United States, 23 million people felt that they had had a verge of death experience. They had been very close to death. And of those 23 million people, 8 million had a mystical encounter of some kind in connection with the death event. Now, you cannot sweep 8 million people's experiences under the rug, can you?
We've been to a graveyard where death is universal. In a hospital, death is an ever-threatening danger. And that's where it all began for Jayne Smith.
That's right, Burke. It did begin in a hospital almost 35 years ago. It was a little hospital in southern Delaware, and I was not even ill. I had simply gone in to have a baby. It was my second child. And I can remember lying on the delivery table, experiencing labor pains, and suddenly I had a really horrendous pain, and I put the nose cone of trilene that I had been given up to my nose and inhaled very, very deeply. Now, at that point, I should have become unconscious, and I knew that I should be unconscious, but I wasn't. I remained fully conscious, totally aware. I was in blackness. I couldn't see anything, but I was thinking to myself, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to know anything right now, and I do. What on earth has happened, I wondered. And at that point, I felt something leave my body. It was a whoosh. It went up through the top of my head. I could feel it and I could hear it. Just a soft, gentle whoosh. And at that point, I found myself standing in a kind of gray mist. And then I knew that I had died.
This, then, is the breakthrough. Many have traveled this way. More and more are coming forward. The near-death experience is known, but Jayne's experience is more detailed and meaningful than any we've heard. Jayne, let us try to follow it with you through your own eyes and mind. First, let me ask you, is it still really precise and clear in your memory?
Oh, it is, Burke. I think the memory of this experience is actually seared into my very soul. You see, when I found myself standing in this gray mist with the realization that I had died, I remember feeling so overjoyed and so thrilled because I knew that even though I was what we call dead, I was still very much alive. Very much alive. I was totally aware. And I began to pour out these feelings of thanksgiving. I wasn't doing it verbally, but it seemed that the very essence of me was saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, God. Thank you that you set it up this way, that I really am immortal. I was not annihilated. And I was involved in this tremendous pouring forth of gratitude and joy. And as that was going on inside me, this white light started infiltrating my consciousness, and it came into me. It seemed that I went out into it. I expanded into it as it came into my field of consciousness. And there was nothing that I was aware of except this brilliant white light. And the light brought with it the most incredible feelings of total love, total safety, total protection. And I was just enveloped in this. I remember feeling almost cradled by it. It was so dynamic, it was almost palpable. And as I existed in this white light and in this incredible love, I began to be rapturous. And the rapture built, and the bliss built, and my consciousness of everything seemed to expand with the bliss of it all. And suddenly there came into my field of consciousness an entire field of knowledge. It was like a block. It was like a whole block of knowledge that just simply came in and settled itself on me. And I knew what takes several sentences to tell. But it didn't come in several sentences. It just came in all of a piece. And what I knew was that I was immortal, that I was eternal, that I was indestructible, that I always had been and that I always would be, and that there was no way in this world that I could ever be lost, that it was impossible for me to fall into a crack in the universe somewhere and never be heard from again. I just knew that I was utterly safe and that I always had been forever and ever and ever. And when that block of knowledge was digested by me, as it were, another block of knowledge came in, another whole field came into my being. And what I knew then was that the universe runs according to a perfect plan. I knew that the plan was perfect, and everything that we think about as hard to understand or unfair or cruel, brutal, whatever, that was all really without meaning. And I know that's very difficult. But I knew this. I understood it. I comprehended it in a way that when I came back from the experience, I really couldn't comprehend anymore. But I understood that all of the things that we worry about and that concern us, we don't have to worry about at all. There is a perfect plan, and the plan is working itself out in its perfection. And then I remember I simply became more blissful, more rapturous, more ecstatic. I just was filling and filling with this light and with this love that was in the light. You know, the dynamics of this light are not static at all. They are so dynamic. There's just so much going on in there of love and joy and knowledge. And, you know, as you take it into yourself, or really as it goes into you and you receive it, your ecstasy level just becomes tremendous. And I know that I had lost all sense of having a body. It was just my consciousness, sort of pure and free-floating. And I did not think at all during this part of the experience. I had no thoughts. I was like a receiving station. I merely felt and absorbed and took in and did not think at all. But I reached the point in the rapture of it all where I thought to myself, suddenly, the first thought, I wonder how much more of this I can stand before I shatter. And with that thought, the light began to recede. So the universe will not let us shatter. We cannot take in more of this bliss and joy than we are able to handle at the time. And as the light began to recede, of course, the rapture that I had built up also began to dissipate. And for a couple of seconds, I could not remember what was going on. I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how I got here. I can't remember what's going on. I didn't know whether I had been in that light for a minute or a day or 100 years. I think the force of all that energy just produced a condition in me of amnesia for a couple of seconds. But that was not allowed to last very long either, because within a second or two, I found myself standing in an absolutely beautiful green meadow. And I knew what was going on. I knew again who I was, that I had died. My amnesia period was over with. And I stood there in this gorgeous meadow, and I remember that the light was different from the light here on Earth, although it was not that brilliant white light in which I was involved, but it was a more beautiful light. There was a goldenness to this light. And I remember the sky was very blue. I don't recall seeing the sun. The colors were extraordinary. The green of the meadow was fantastic. There were flowers blooming all around, and the flowers had colors that I had never seen before. And I was very aware that I had never seen these colors before, and I was very excited about it. And, I was just standing here thinking, oh my gosh, I've never seen these colors before. And I thought I'd seen all the colors. And I was thrilled to death. The beauty was incredible. And in addition to the fantastic colors, I could see a soft light glowing inside every living thing. It was not a light that was reflected from an outside source. You could always tell that it was coming from somewhere in the center of this growing thing, this flower, this leaf, whatever. Just this beautiful soft light. And I think that I was seeing the life inside of everything. And when I had finished, more or less, looking at this exquisite beauty, I started to walk, and I had only taken a few steps before I saw that there was in front of me a hill. It was a rather low hill, and there were perhaps 18 or 19 or 20 people standing on the hill, and they were dressed in robes, very simple, I suppose maybe Grecian type robes. And they were also in all these beautiful colors. There were men, there were women. There were more men than women there. I don't know why. I've thought about this a little bit. But there were both men and women there. No one that I knew, but then I really had no close emotional ties with anyone on the other side, so it was not surprising that no one was there that I knew. And I thought to myself, oh, I want to talk with them. And it seemed that immediately I was there on top of the hill. Now, I don't know whether I was able to just glide there very quickly and effortlessly, or whether I only had to think that I wanted to be there and I was there. What I do remember is that I did not have to climb the hill. There was no effort involved in this. And as I found myself at the top of the hill, I saw that over on the horizon, and just a little bit lower than the horizon, there was a city. And I realized in some way that this was more than just a city, that what I was seeing over there actually represented a world. And I wondered, is that the world that I just came from, or the one that I'm going to? And I never had a chance to find out, because right at that moment, 3 or 4 of the men who were in this group of people on the hill came to me, and we met. And I said to them, I know what has happened. I realize that I am dead. I know what's going on. And one man of the group did all of the talking to me. He was quite tall. He was taller than the rest. And I remember that the robe he was wearing was purple. And he had a white fringe of hair that went around. The top of his head was bald. He had an absolutely marvelous face. It was very noble, very kind. I guess what we would think of as a very spiritual face. He also had about him a great deal of authority, so that I felt that I was talking to someone who I could trust completely. And when I said to him, I know what's going on, I know that I've died, he said, yes, that's true, but you are not going to be staying here because it isn't time for you to be here yet. And I must tell you that when we talked, we did not move our mouths. I can remember that I only had to have the impulse that contained the things that I wanted to say. And he immediately would get that and answer me. And even though he was not moving his mouth when he talked with me, I could hear the sound of his voice in my inner ear. I know what he sounded like. So it was a mental transmission, and yet I could hear what he sounded like. For a long, long time, I could remember the sound of his voice. And I said to him again then, everything that has happened to me since I crossed over is so beautiful. Everything is so perfect. What about my sins? And he said, there are no sins, not the way you think of them on earth. He said, the only thing that has any meaning here is what you think. And then he asked me a question. He said, what is in your heart? And in some incredible way that I don't understand at all, I was enabled to look deeply inside myself, really into the very core of me, into my essence. And I saw that what was there was love and nothing else. My core was perfect love, loving perfection. I had complete love and acceptance for everything. I saw my own gentleness, tenderness, harmlessness. I simply was perfect and loving. And I said to him, of course. And I had the feeling that I was connecting with knowledge that I had known before. And I wondered, how on earth did I ever forget anything that important? I have known that. And then I said, can you tell me what everything is all about? The whole world, everything. And he said, yes. And he told me, and it took maybe 3 sentences at the most. It was so simple. I understood that immediately. I had total comprehension of what he was saying to me. And I remember again saying to him, of course. And it was that feeling again of reconnecting with knowledge that I had once had and wondering, how on earth did I forget that? And then I said to him, since I'm not going to be able to stay, there are so many people I want to take this back to. May I take this all back with me? And he said, you may take the answer to the first question back. That was the one about sin. But he said the answer to the second one, you are not going to be able to remember. And the next thing I knew, there was a tremendous loud banging in my head, and it was loud, and it was fast, and it was extremely irritating. It went on for just a few seconds, just this loud bang, 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 bang. And then that was over, and there was a sort of electronic click in my ear. And I really will never forget the sound of that click, because I remember thinking, that sounds almost like a tape recorder. And when the click clicked, that was it. I was back, and I opened my eyes, and I looked over, and my doctor was standing over here, and she was doing something to my chest that hurt me very much. And I said to her, I don't mean to be rude, but I really wish you would stop that. And she smiled a very small smile and said, well, all right, then I will.
And you're here. Jayne, have you ever been able to remember anything of that key of life that was given to you and then withdrawn?
Burke, I have never been able to remember those specific 2 or 3 sentences that I was told. And I have tried, and I have tried, and for years after this experience, I would make a concerted effort to try, especially after I went to bed at night, when I would be lying there in that sort of very relaxed, not quite asleep state. And I would have the feeling that if I could just put my antenna out far enough, perhaps I could pull that answer back in, and I never could. And so finally, I just stopped trying to do that. But I think that I do know what he was telling me, even though I can't, recall the actual 2 or 3 sentences. I know that it has to do with love. And I believe that it has to do with what I was enabled to see when he said, what is in your heart? And I looked inside myself and saw that I was perfect love. Now, you know that doesn't apply to just me. That applies to all human beings. That is what we are. That is our core. This perfection, this love, this godness. I believe that what it's all about is the world will keep turning, and we will have all these experiences, and it will go on forever and ever and ever as we learn to bring that into our consciousness and have it remain there all the time. Our connection with God, just there, not somewhere in our unconscious, but consciously aware all the time of who we really are. I think that's what the journey is.
And a magnificent journey it has been.
Yes.
Thank you, Jayne. Thank you. Many poets have intuitively glimpsed flashes from beyond this life. But now Jayne Smith and others are involved in an explosion of knowledge based on direct experience. You've thought long and hard since your contact, Jayne. What's going on?
Oh, Burke, I think something absolutely wonderful is going on. I think that this is the time in human evolution when the universe is concentrating on helping us to expand our consciousness, helping us to get in touch with who we really are, making that inner connection. I think that it's time in our progress as human beings to become aware of the fact that we are one with God. We are God's children, literally. We are, the core of us is love, and God is love, and we are one with God. I think the universe is helping us to expand enough that we can open to that wonderful feeling and knowledge. I think that perhaps we've spent several hundred years now in an intellectual mode, and I'm not anti-intellectual at all. The intellect and love together create wisdom. The intellect without love can actually be very cruel. And it's time that we became wise human beings. It's time that we put our intellects in the service of our hearts instead of the other way around. And this is what I think is going on now. I think these mystical experiences that those of us who have had near-death experiences have had, mystical experiences that meditators have had, this is all part of the universe's gift to us, because we can then come back and say to others, this is happening. Listen with your heart and you'll know that this is true. And the thing that's made it all so easy is that we have the communications now at this point in our development to make this a worldwide thing.
Then this is a time for communication of a message, a special message. Is this a foreordained time?
I think foreordained, that's a word I'm not sure about. We are on a journey back to God. The journey is long, but the journey is continual. Somewhere within the journey, it was time for us to start opening our hearts. In a sense, foreordained, yes, because there's no way we will not all make that journey somewhere in time.
Will you take us further?
Burke, I hope that someday we'll have an opportunity to sit down again and talk, because I'd really like to talk about what I think are the deeper levels of meaning behind the messages that I was given. But for now, I think I would like to leave you with this thought, that God is light and love and life. And we human beings are also light and love and life. And when we are in a space of oneness with God, with our Creator, the experience that we have is one of peace and joy. You know, the great Catholic French theologian Père Teilhard said that joy is the infallible evidence of the presence and the activity of God. So whenever we find ourselves in a state of joy, we can know that we are making that connection with the God within us.
We started in a graveyard at dawn, an ending place, and yet we found that the end is the beginning, that the dawn itself is the overwhelming reality, heralding a new age when we can not only hope but know that life and love are forever. Jayne Smith may have found the path that we are all destined to travel someday. This is Jayne Smith with her husband and oldest daughter, just prior to the birth of her second child, the experience which was to bring about her contact with another world, one she believes is the world of spirit. Only a few years earlier, she and her college sweetheart had married in a small Episcopal church in southern Delaware, the church in which her family has worshipped for several generations. Subsequently, a third daughter was born, and the family was complete. When the youngest of her daughters entered school, Jayne began a career as an actress and model, and for many years divided her time between the raising of an active, energetic family and her love of acting. Now, at this time in her life's journey, she has begun a third career, a labor of love. She has taken her message to many hundreds of thousands of people via her television appearances in numerous cities and on 3 major networks, where she has invariably transfixed audiences as she told fragments of her amazing experience. Penguin Video Productions' Mark Reams and longtime friend, co-producer Burke Holly, arranged for the filming of this account in Fayetteville, Arkansas, under Mrs. Smith's editorial control.